Welcome to the News9 Plus Show on the world's first news and current affairs OTT platform, News9 Plus. India's ties with the Maldives may be at their lowest point ever. There's a full-scale diplomatic war underway with Malé, and the Maldivian president is currently cozying up to Beijing. But there's some good news in the neighborhood. In the span of just 48 hours, both Bangladesh and Bhutan went to the polls. Both countries have seen pro-India governments return to power. Sheikh Hasina in Bangladesh and Tshering Tobgay in Bhutan. Now, joining me to discuss these developments in the region are General Sanjay Kulkarni, Professor Swaran Singh, and my colleague Aditya Raj Kaul. General Kulkarni, I want to start by asking you, how does having two friendly neighborhood, friendly countries in the neighborhood, pro-India government in the neighborhood help India's foreign policy?
Thank you, Sandeep. In fact, I have no doubt all of them will be friendly to us because all of them understand the expansionist policy of China. All of them know what is a debt trap diplomacy.
Yes.
And, well, it's just as a part of passing time. All neighbors of India have a long relationship with India, extremely long, be it Maldives, be it Nepal, be it Bhutan, be it Bangladesh, anyone, Myanmar, anybody and everybody, Sri Lanka. Now imagine Sri Lanka, despite what they went along with China, they now seem to realize it.
Absolutely.
That if it hadn't been for India, they would not have come out of the problems that they were in. So it's very, very essential. And we always have said our neighborhood first, and we've always gone about it, not as a big brother, but as equal partners. And in that equal partners and taking them along in all fields, be it infrastructure, be it creating hospitals for them, be it creating, engineering colleges for them,
Absolutely.
Or for that matter, even supplying with water, anything and everything, disaster management. So that is one thing, Sandeep. I'm sure definitely it's a big boon and a nice, good feeling that Bangladesh and Bhutan, both of them, despite the pressures that they were feeling, especially Bangladesh was feeling the pressure from USA on aspects of human rights and not free and fair, all of that set aside. Even USA today feels, yes, Bangladesh, and Bangladesh is closer to China, is closer to India, and definitely they feel that China is developmental and not security. So that's a very big thing, which as a statement has come from their foreign minister, that we respect India and they owe a lot. And Sheikh Hasina's return for the 4th time, I think is a big thing. Welcome step.
Aditya,
whether it is in Bhutan or in Bangladesh.
Aditya, the return of Sheikh Hasina in Bangladesh and a pro-Indian government in Bhutan, how does that change things, given the fact that we've been looking at Maldives, the way relationships, the diplomatic ties have nosedived, all thanks to what the Maldivian ministers have been saying. But how does this kind of alter the balance? Is it like 5 more years of stability now?
Absolutely. A stable neighborhood, a peaceful neighborhood is the key to India's foreign policy as well. Ever since Prime Minister Narendra Modi came in 2014, we've had a situation where Prime Minister has emphasized on the neighborhood first diplomacy. Both, in the earlier term when Sushma Swaraj was there, she had a friendly and cordial relations with all the leaders, and that has been taken forward by Foreign Minister Jaishankar. Even though we are emphasizing on Sheikh Hasina and Mr. Tobgay, both who have had personal chemistry and rapport with Prime Minister Modi. But let's not forget Maldives as well. It might have a different government which is pro-China right now, Islamist in their tendency. And with the recent controversy, things may be getting sour. But the entire opposition is friendly with India. Even President Yamin, to a great extent, from time to time, has been closer to India than China. The current opposition, including President Soleh, including Abdullah Shahid, Maria Didi, anybody that we speak about are vociferous supporters of India because they realize that not just does Maldives get the highest number of tourists from India, but the investment, healthcare, humanitarian aid, India is always there first. Similar situation with Bangladesh, where of course you remember history after 1971, India giving shelter to Sheikh Hasina. She will never forget that. She will never forget the creation of Bangladesh itself. There have been some border disputes that have been there. There has been cattle smuggling. There's been a lot of inflow of people that's been coming in. I think those border talks will be underway, but I think Sheikh Hasina recently visited New Delhi and things are very friendly. Similar with Bhutan, we remember the Doklam controversy that actually triggered somewhere around 2016-17. and that was resolved with keen diplomacy between Foreign Secretary Jaishankar at that time and his counterpart in Bhutan. So I think overall, when India is looking at a global power push, a successful G20 has recently concluded, neighborhood, a friendly neighborhood at a time when Afghanistan has erupted, you have Pakistan erupting as well, and Sri Lanka recently has had an economic collapse completely.
Absolutely.
So at that time, this is a glimmer of hope that is coming in for India of a stability.
Oh, glimmer of hope. And Professor Singh, what Aditya just mentioned, this glimmer of hope in our neighborhood first policy, how do these two very friendly pro-India governments in Bhutan and Bangladesh, to an extent, how do they offset the China factor that's been very important in the last decade or so?
I think, Sandeep, glimmer of hope lies in India being seen as emerging power, emerging economy, already fifth largest, slated to be third largest by 2030 or somewhere there. Being world's largest democracy, having a political stability and a strong leader, that is where glimmer of hope lies. But when it comes to China seeking and building certain amount of influence in India's immediate neighborhood, that's a very different story. In 1990, both China and India had about roughly $300 billion of economy. China has reached to almost 20 trillion economy. India is about 3.75 trillion economy now.
Right.
China, with being a single party controlled country, has deep pockets and has therefore built strong commercial economic relationships around the world. Barring about a dozen countries, much of the world has China as the largest economic partner, including all the Western nations. Now, that is the also story in India's neighborhood, and that is where we have seen in about last 2 decades a very new phenomenon emerging in India's immediate neighborhood in South Asia. Invariably, you have two political parties, two big leaders, one usually cozying up to China, other being seen as largely closer to India or pro-India. And that is where you're discussing that how in Maldives now we have a president who is seen as pro-China, and of course in Bhutan and Bangladesh, leaders that are seen as pro-India have come back to power.
Right.
Now, difference that we need to really notice here is that India is neither competing nor should compete with China on China's terms.
Right.
Of course, India also is building economic relationship with immediate neighborhood, and example of Sri Lanka is fantastic, where India has really contributed now almost about $4 billion plus of assistance and humanitarian aid and so on, and is now being seen cozying up to India. And the recent is that on yesterday they disallowed Chinese research vessels to enter their economic zone and also anchor on their ports. So India has a very different way of approaching and engaging these nations, which is where India engages with media, with business, with civil society, with politicians, whereas China largely has a commercial relationship centered on regimes, ruling leaders, very limited number. So it's a very different, kind of a equation that India has with these countries and China has with these countries. There is no doubt China's influence in the immediate region has grown up, but it's not that India's relationship has disappeared over a period of time. India has a very different kind of widespread, deep-rooted relationship with most of these immediate neighborhood countries. And sometimes you see these leaders who are seen as pro-China, till recently KP Sharma Oli in Nepal was seen as China leader. So sometime, and that's my last point, sometimes these leaders make these anti-India noises just to demonstrate their loyalty to China. And I think that is how one has to put things in perspective, that sometimes they are demonstrations of loyalty to China rather than really being against India. You notice even in Maldives, India's projects continue. It's not that India's projects have been halted or stopped. India's development projects are continuing in Maldives, except that some of these very unusual, sort of harsh noises are seen, which is unprecedented in some ways. But one has to put things in proportion. It's not that India has disappeared from Maldives.
No, absolutely not. And in fact, the point that you mentioned, Professor Singh, I want to ask General Kulkarni this thing of the difference between the kind of assistance that India gives to Sri Lanka versus what China gives. I mean, China gives debt trap diplomacy, it believes in debt trap diplomacy, whereas in India's case, it's more a question of aid, right? We literally bailed Sri Lanka out. How is it that countries like Maldives are rushing into China's arms, knowing full well what happened to countries like Sri Lanka and even not so long ago Pakistan? They're literally, broke trying to pay Chinese loans back.
Sandeep, I would go along with Professor Swaran when he says, we mustn't have a knee-jerk reaction. Even if there are 55% of the votes that may have gone to the Maldivian president, there are 45% people still in Maldives who support India, who understand India, that India is just about 750 kilometers away, whereas Australia is 7,200 kilometers. Pakistan is over 31, China is around 4,200 kilometers. We are just 750 kilometers and they are virtually dependent on us for everything. And so much so that on and off, whenever we would discuss with the Maldivians, they would, say, can you give us some shelter on the western coast of India? You never know, we are just about 1 meter above the sea. And about 80% of the time they're always in, maroon. And they never know when, with the climate change, they just might disappear from this face of the earth.
Yes, it's a country at great risk.
There is all kinds of things.
Right.
Yeah, because, and the fact that the Chinese have deep pockets, and that's the reason why they are, able to come forward. And all said and done, in our neighborhood, people are like us. They understand that China is not them, but India is them. And that is what makes world of a difference. And again, like the Maldivian president would say, well, we are not China inclined, but we are only looking at, the Maldivian interest first. Whatever be it so, whether it is the Maldivian interest or the Chinese interest, Chinese owing them by billions of dollars that may be invested, and the tourism. Of course, we have a great, about over 2 lakh people, Indians who go as tourists. Equal numbers coming from China. Almost the equal numbers come from Russia. So the 5 lakh population, Sunni-dominated population, they all understand that India is the country from where they can get onions, where they can get cement, from where they get sugar, from where they will get wheat. Is everything coming from India, including vegetables.
And not to forget drinking water as well, as what happened a decade ago.
Drinking water in dire distress. Dire distress. And remember the Operation Cactus. Had it not been for India's instant support and vacating it, immediately thereafter handing over to the Maldivians, the LTT would have been there, sitting on their head. So there's a lot that the Maldivians understand. There's a lot that they know. But yes, these kind of noises are made with a view to gain, popularity, to get maximum kind. And China is looking at it, obviously, just at not even 300 square kilometers of land, but 90,000 square kilometers of the EEZ. That's where the Chinese are looking at. They could have a base. We have just about a few helicopters and a few Dorniers, all that for disaster management for them. All that for the hospitals that we make for them, and everything. They all understand.
China could be looking at a deep water base there.
But then, it's not those petty interests, but in long term, be it Maldives or be it any of our neighborhood, they have lovely, good relationship. People-to-people relationship with our neighborhood is ideal. Government, sometimes, they get wooed by somebody, like in Sri Lanka it happened. He thought Hamban Tota is one of his constituency. He could get made everything, and he then realized what he did to Sri Lanka. Now then, when they realize that, well, China was almost like we are in a debt trap, they come to, India did not ask for it. India offered it. India gave aid not as something wanting to get something in return, but as being good friends, as good neighbors. They all understand. And that's the strength of India. And slowly and steadily we are still building Moldavia. In Maldives, the number of infrastructure projects which are going on. In fact, Mr. Jaishankar just inaugurated one just a year back. And again, all the infrastructure projects that are going on, be it hospitals, be it your police academy, be it engineering colleges, be it infrastructures, be it bridges, be it anything and everything, so much of the sports complexes that have come up over there.
Yeah, absolutely. India remains very heavily invested in Maldives, General Kulkarni. In fact, Aditya, you've been talking to a lot of Maldivian ministers, politicians and civil society members, and they're absolutely aghast at what happened, the utterances of their ministers. How does India ensure that these people-to-people ties that our panelists just mentioned, I mean, they're very deep historic ties between India and the Maldives. How do we ensure that those ties are preserved, in the storm of this diplomatic incident? How do you make sure that it's not damaged beyond a certain point?
Well, Sandeep, what I can say is that right now the ball is in Maldives' court, and it is for the president of Maldives to actually mend whatever damage has happened over the last 72 hours.
Right.
I spoke to Maria Didi, who's the former defense minister of Maldives, and Maria Didi not just said that the Maldives government needs to apologize and send a goodwill delegation immediately to India, but also said that the Maldives first policy cannot happen after compromising relationship with India. You know, India comes first whenever Maldives actually looks outside their territory. So I think India has proved since the 60s the kind of humanitarian help that has reached out at a time when President Yamin was actually locking up the opposition leaders. India was raising their voice and saying that such human rights violation cannot be tolerated, and they stand for political rights. So I think people remember, and President of Maldives cannot really look the other way. That's why he has suspended those ministers, but perhaps it will take a little more, either a goodwill delegation or a formal apology. Otherwise, the standoff will only continue and escalate, and perhaps Maldives, which has its economy completely dependent on tourism, cannot really take chances.
Absolutely. And in fact, Professor Singh, you know, while we are talking about Maldives, it possibly is just a storm that might blow over, because sooner or later, as Aditya was mentioning, you know, good sense will prevail. The fact is that India is the closest country closest to Maldives, and which renders all kinds of aid and assistance whenever called upon. But you know, now the fact that you have Bangladesh, a pro-India government there, and it's been peace and stability there on the Bangladesh front for decades, and we're looking at Myanmar on the other hand, which is descended into civil war and anarchy. It's ruptured our land bridge with the ASEAN countries. We were talking about this land bridge, the ASEAN corridor, the road and port connectivity. Can Bangladesh kind of, in a sense, offset the loss of Myanmar, if you know, because of the civil war? The projects, the connectivity projects, can that kind of, to some extent, offset this situation in Myanmar?
Sandeep, Bangladesh for almost a decade now has come to be a role model for South Asia. There is a talk of the Bangladesh model now, in terms of Bangladesh almost entering the middle income level of being a country with that kind of per capita income. And with continuation of the same leadership, it means the similar programs will continue. And the fact that both leaders of India and Bangladesh are really close and they have very good chemistry with each other should mean that the relationship will be not just good for bilateral relations, but also together playing a role at the regional level. And India's complete focus shifting away from South Asia. You remember from 2016 November, SAARC is virtually dysfunctional. At least
BIMSTEC is kind of taken over. Yes.
And this has seen India moving much towards Bay of Bengal area, with BIMSTEC becoming an attractive connect, where India wants to play an increasing role. And since you mentioned the Bangladesh, BIMSTEC Secretariat is in Dhaka. In Secretariat, largest contributor country is India. So in that sense, that regional connect of India with Southeast Asia in a situation that, as you mentioned, Myanmar is right now, would perhaps see India-Bangladesh connecting much better and sort of connecting with the larger region around the Bay of Bengal, which would then include Thailand and Myanmar, of course, but larger other rest of Southeast Asia as well. Any two countries that begin to showcase, stronger growth rates and better social transformation will build several new partnerships, and that is likely to happen and is happening already between India and Bangladesh. But what I also, in few seconds, 10 seconds or 30 seconds, want to underline is the unique underpinning of emotional connect that India has with much of its neighborhood, given the shared history, shared ethnicity, language, culture, religion, all kind of things. And that is very unusual bind. So even if you see once in a while aberrations like what you see happening in terms of kind of comments that came from Maldives, which I also see part of the overall sort of deterioration of political discourse around the world. People have become far more crass in the way they express things. And, there is extreme need for caution, at least on our side on this. This will blow over. Already after his swearing in, the President Muizu was already talking of balancing his foreign policy, because he was seen unusually not owing to sort of, more inclined towards China. He wanted to sort that out, but it suddenly happened that the kind of emotions and that were strong sentiments built during election campaign
Right.
have resulted in some of his juniors really shouting out really unexpected language.
Absolutely.
And
In fact,
that perhaps is an aberration.
it's an
And I think
aberration,
that
and I
aberration,
want to ask General Kulkarni this. General Kulkarni, while we are talking about India's big gains in the east with Bhutan and Bangladesh, let's not forget that Bangladesh has got a big, very significant trade relationship with China, and China has made deep inroads there with a lot of investments. They're the top military hardware suppliers to Dhaka. There's $20 billion worth of trade. And at the same time, Bangladesh is experiencing some kind of economic headwinds, right? Their economy isn't doing as well. Forex reserves have dwindled, and they faced an energy crisis recently. What are the chances that they could fall prey to China's debt trap diplomacy? And in that case, what are India's imperatives?
Sandeep, fortunately, I think Bangladesh on and off has been saying it, that their interest with China are primarily for their own development and do not involve security. Having said that, of course, the Chinese have invested over $2 billion in the Cox's Bazar submarine project.
Yes.
There is a whole lot of projects which are coming inside Bangladesh, and Bangladesh has been taking a lot of economic assistance from there. The Padma Bridge, which was there, which was in doldrums, and which Sheikh Hasina requested China to help economically, and that was, back into Pavel. So there are a lot of infrastructure which comes up in Bangladesh would obviously help us also, because that acts as a stepping stone for us to go to the northeast through Bangladesh. So that's a good thing, no problem with that. But yes, Bangladesh right now the economy is doing well, and they know that almost 58, what they claim that just about 1% of the GDP is China-based, even if it is taken to be that way. And the foreign debts aren't going beyond about 14%. And they feel that about 55% of the foreign debtors, then there's a possibility that they just might get caught in the debt trap diplomacy of China. But they're aware of it. They know what's happened with Sri Lanka. They know what's going on the world over in Africa and even Latin America. They understand what China is all up to. And hopefully, Bangladesh will not. I feel hopefully Bangladesh will not fall prey to the Chinese district. But yes, we have to be cautious. We have to cultivate people. We have to indulge in it. And there's nothing better than, as rightly brought out, the emotional connect, the people-to-people connect. Now, we need not tell Bangladesh again and again, or be able to tell them that, look, we helped liberate you. No, it was part of us. We did what we wanted to do. And what the Prime Minister at that point of time, Mrs. Gandhi, said, we've done our job, we are out of it. We never stayed there. We never even took an inch of their land. So Bangladesh is fully aware. Sheikh Hasina is fully indebted to India. But there is no requirement to say so that, well, anybody is indebted to us, or we have done favors to you. We've done no favors. We did what we were supposed to do as your neighbor. We've done that, and we're out of it. And that is what probably Bangladesh appreciates, and that is why Bangladesh continues to interact with India. Yeah.
Right, absolutely. And that's a great concluding line, General Kulkarni, that India does what India does because it does the right thing, especially when it comes to our neighborhood. And a big fillip to India's neighborhood first policy with India's big gains in Bangladesh and Bhutan. I'd like to thank my panelists, General Kulkarni and Professor Singh, Aditya, for discussing these important developments in South Asia. Thanks very much. It's the murder that's shocked India. More than 2 days after Suchna Seth murdered her 4-year-old son, we are still not very clear why she did it. And joining me to discuss this murder are my colleague Mohammad Wajiullah from Bengaluru, my colleague Geeta Datta in the studio here in Delhi. Waji, give us the situation right now as it stands. What are the police saying about this bizarre murder?
Well, as of now, the Goa police is doing the investigation in this matter. Though the lady was caught in Karnataka under the Chindutulka police limits, the case is being registered in Goa because the murder happened in Goa, and it was due to the top of the Goa police that the entire situation came to this stage. From what we've understood now is that the girl, the Suchna Seth, has been given to police custody for 6 days, and interrogations will be going on as of now. But we've learned this from the postmortem report that the death was due to suffocation, and there were no marks on the body is what the post-mortem report says. And today morning, the father had done the last rites of his son, where he was seen videos of him carrying the body to the cremation, this thing, where the body was laid to rest. But from what we've understood is in the court that Suchna had said that it was that she was having a very bad relationship with her husband, and both of them had called off their wedding a few years back. And from what we've learned from the court proceeding is that Suchna had filed a domestic violence case against her husband on the 8th of August 2022, where she had said that he's financially torturing her and verbally torturing her. And then she had asked the court for an interim maintenance of 2 lakh rupees from her husband, claiming that he earns close to 9 lakh rupees. So he should give them 2 lakh rupees. But the court at that point of time had said that we will only give you 20,000 rupees maintenance, and we will listen to the matter from both the sides, and then we will come to a conclusion. So where she has gone on to say in her in the interrogation that she was unhappy with the relationship and she did not want her son to meet the father, and that is why she tried to kill her son. So we tried to find out what had actually happened between the marriage, and these are the details that we've got, that there was a domestic violence case also against the husband, is what we've been told as per the court order of 2022.
Right. And Vaji, thanks very much. I'm going to bring Geeta in now. Geeta, what are the unanswered questions about this very bizarre case? I mean, we're calling her monster mom, but I mean, surely there are a lot of questions that we don't know the answers to.
Yeah, it's really tragic for anybody when you see a 4-year-old child's body, when the father is going to cremate. Yeah. What we don't know, and what she has given a little peep into, is why did she kill? But right. And I think from whatever information that we've got, the answer why probably would come from the doctors, because it seems to be that she is dealing with a lot of mental issues.
Yes.
And she seems to be dealing with the fact that her husband's not paying her enough, which is sad because she was a successful entrepreneur. She was considered one of the brightest minds. Right. And for her to say that, but having said that, we don't know. There are a lot of answers we don't know. And right. I have a feeling one would land up sort of trying to, answers that we would get probably would be to do with the fact that she was being beaten, she was under mental torture,
right.
And whatever. I mean, for me, it doesn't excuse what she's done, but that's why you have mental doctors, because they are the ones who know what's happening, and they are the ones who can understand the fact that a mother can land up taking such drastic actions against her own child.
In fact, Geeta, let's ask Dr. Rashna Khanna. She's just joining us right now. Hello, Dr. Khanna. Geeta was mentioning this point about this new revelations that have come out in this case. The fact that there was an element of domestic violence involved, that Suchna's husband was beating her up, according to what she's told the police. Could that become grounds for, killing her child and, taking her son's life?
What happens is we've been speaking since yesterday about this, and of course more and more things are unraveling in the case. But as conjectured even yesterday, what happens is everything is very fast-paced today. The society is very fast-paced today. We have a lot of competition. There is a huge struggle at every end to balance that competition. Yeah. So for a woman, there is, there's this whole need to be a good mother, a good wife, financially independent, and so many other things. And it's not that it's a gender thing, but it is the way it is today. And today people are not being able to balance those emotions at all, because everything is so fast-paced and competitive. Having said that, there is no way that we can say that this heinous crime has. There is nothing to it. But having said that, so we could be looking at somebody dealing with one very high, very high emotional pressure, which she was grappling with very, very clearly. So a disturbed relationship is always going to create a disturbed mind.
Right. Absolutely.
Then thirdly, she was obviously in a job which was a very demanding job. Yeah. Right. So, and then also fourthly, to understand that there could be an underlying psychiatric disorder, which we are yet to understand more from the case, which we are not negating. So we
Right.
do have antisocial personalities, we do have disorders like that. We do have mindsets, which are mindsets which work, from a criminal perspective also. Although we've seen that she's been very functional, right? Then we also understand we don't know if there was a substance involved.
Yes.
But certainly rage has been one of the reasons which created this impulsive action. But having said that, if we were to see later on, she's masked it also.
Yes.
See, effectively, sometimes we expect that human
Yeah.
emotions are very complex.
Right.
So in human emotions, people end up, suppose there is rage, suppose there is rage, there is other complex emotions, coming. These emotions, effectively, there was no remorse or there was no guilt.
Right.
Because after that, we've seen that, she's kind of wanting to, show that it was a suicide and things like that. So.
Right. Deepak Raheja is joining us right now. And Dr. Raheja, I want to ask you that I've been reading reports, research reports, of course, which say that while men, of course, they make up the majority, vast majority of homicides, they're more likely to kill strangers and people not known to them. But a large majority of women, they kill for love or for gain, and more importantly, they target those who are closest to them. And we've seen that in a case, a very bizarre case in Kerala, where a woman is alleged to have murdered a large number of her family members. What explains this? I mean, admittedly, women are a small percentage of homicides. They make up for a small percentage of homicides. Why is it that they tend to target those who are close to them?
Because I feel that when a woman decides to take revenge, then the vendetta is so strong that she's willing to go all out. And a woman usually by virtue is very empathetic, is very forgiving. So she's not going to really make that decision very easily. But having made that decision, I think she's more likely to go all out and execute what she decides to do. But, nonetheless, all the cases that you mentioned, they've mostly been crimes of passion or, when the modesty is outraged or the husband has been very, very wicked. You won't really find very many examples when a woman sets out, who's a mother, to kill her own child. So this is like I've been saying, it's a one-off. It is not something that's very easily explainable, and I don't think it is worthy of generalizing and creating a panic. But this is very, very atypical, and is definitely worthy of more psychological investigation into these circumstances that may have led a mind which is very bright. She was highly intellectual. She was Harvard trained.
Absolutely.
An MBA, had her
Outstanding
own startup.
academic achievements. Yes.
Outstanding. Everything is outstanding for her to decide. And then, like Dr. Rashna was just saying, I was hearing that the manner in which she's dealt with the guilt. I mean, even if so, I don't think this. May have been definitely, and now we know the autopsy report which says that the death may have happened even 36 hours earlier. So it needs to be corroborated with when she checked in, with the child was alive when she checked in, and for her to then just postulate the entire plan of putting it in a bag, figuring out a taxi, going all the way, trying to deal with the guilt. So there was really no guilt or remorse. I mean, she, a woman, even if it happened impromptu and if it happened impulsively, it would lead to a breakdown of sorts. And at that moment, the whole idea will not be how to save myself and prevent from legal penal consequences, So she's then, loaded with the ideas of how to be able to get rid of the body, to plan everything. It sounds very, very bizarre, and it's somehow doesn't seem to fit in,
And that's a story that we're going to be following. Thank you very much, Dr. Raheja, Dr. Rashna Khanna, and Geeta for your insights into that very, very bizarre case. And we're going to be following that story over the next couple of days. While Maldivian ministers are abusing India it's worth recalling the time when India saved the Maldives. Deepak Badana spoke to General Bhatia, who was part of an operation that saved Maldives in just 16 hours. It's one of the greatest military operations of its kind and part of our special series, First Person. We'll leave you with this glimpse of this story. Thank you for watching.
I'm talking of 3rd November 1988, but I was posted as the Brigade Major 50 Para Brigade. This is the time when the IPK was in Sri Lanka and we had Pavan going on. And that was our focus area because Para Brigade is always a reserve brigade. It's Army Code Reserve to do the tasks which are supposed to be done. And it is a normal day in office. The commander was out at around, I got a call from then, General VP Malik, who was then a brigadier. That's around 9-ish or so, that you and the commander are to move to Delhi for operational briefing, and there's an impending operation. That's all. So I said, fine, sir, and that's what it was. But around 10:30 or so, 10:40, I got a call from the Military Operations Directorate in Delhi. And the commander was out actually that time still. And they said, there's the Vice Chief of the Army Staff speaking. And then he was the one who who passed instructions that you are to move to Maldives. There's been a coup out there. And the coup leaders are armed with, machine guns and automatic weapons and rocket launchers and even possibly surface-to-air missiles, right? And you emplane by 12:30. Now this is 10:30, 2 hours emplaning time. So I said, sir, 12:30 is not possible, right? It doesn't, we are studying in a cold start, we out on training, we have no idea that we will be going for operations. There's a preparation time, planning time. In the army, they always say that 1/3 of the time is to spend on preparation and planning and reconnaissance, right? And if this is within 2 hours, you want us to move, sir. It is physically not possible to move to there because the airfield in Khedia and we are in cantonment. The move time itself is about 45 minutes to 1 hour to muster people who are in peacetime duties. Oh, he was not very happy with me. He was very annoyed with me. But then I said, so we'll do it as fast as possible. Islands, small islands, rocky outcrops, out of which about 200 of the 1,200 islands are inhabited, right? And most of these, that time there were about 55 resorts, island resorts. Each island is a resort in itself. It's a beautiful place. And the others are inhabited by small people. And the main island is basically the capital Malé. And Halule is the airfield which was built by India, by the way. Engineers India Limited had built that.
News9 Plus. Download now.